Today we'll be going over endocrine anatomy. So what does endocrine mean? We know that crine means secretion and endo means within, so that means secretions within the body. You also have exocrine glands, which would mean that the secretions are outside of the body. These glands would be salivary glands or sweat glands. Their secretions are secreted outside of the body. But today we'll be concerned with endocrine glands. Our learning objectives for today are to identify the glands, endocrine glands, and associated structures in specific regions. And then we'll also talk about those glands and their basic associated hormones and then their target tissues. There are 4 cranial glands or structures: the anterior pituitary, the posterior pituitary, the hypothalamus, and then the pineal gland. In the cervical region, there are 2 glands, the thyroid and then the parathyroid. In the thoracic region, there is 1 gland, the thymus. In the abdominal region, there are 2 glands, the pancreas and then the adrenals. And then in the pelvic region, there is either the ovaries or the testes, depending on if it is a male or female subject. So starting with the cranial glands, we have the anterior and posterior pituitary. So if we draw a line here, it's actually 2 glands fused together. The front side would be the anterior pituitary, and then the back would be the posterior pituitary. Above it would be the hypothalamus, and then posterior to the hypothalamus would be the pineal gland. So anterior pituitary, posterior pituitary, hypothalamus, pineal gland. Hormones associated with the anterior pituitary include the human growth hormone, which target tissue is bones and muscles. And then it helps to stimulate cell growth and division. And remember, this is coming from the anterior pituitary. Also, thyroid stimulating hormone, also known as thyrotropin. Its target tissue would be the thyroid. And it helps to regulate the release of thyroid hormone. Another one I want you to know is ACTH, or corticotropin. Its target tissue would be the adrenal cortex. And it stimulates the adrenal cortex to secrete or produce glucocorticoids, such as cortisol. Remember, these are coming from the anterior pituitary, and that's human growth hormone, TSH, and ACTH. Those are the ones I want you to know. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about the hypothalamus. And the hypothalamus is important because it sort of acts as a liaison between the nervous system and the endocrine system. So you're receiving sensory information from the nervous system, and the hypothalamus sort of takes that information and tells you whether or not to release a hormone. So say a mother hears a baby crying, and then the hypothalamus takes that information and in turn tells your body to release a hormone to start milk production. So it's important for releasing hormones and inhibiting hormones, but also produces oxytocin and sends it to the posterior pituitary, and then antidiuretic hormone, and also sends it to the posterior pituitary. And these hormones, we'll learn, are actually stored in the posterior pituitary until it is time to release them. So posterior pituitary, it only stores and releases hormones. that are made in the hypothalamus. And those hormones, like we said, are oxytocin, which targets tissue is the uterus and mammary glands. And then the antidiuretic hormone, which target tissue is the kidneys and blood vessels. So important hormones stored and then released in the posterior pituitary are oxytocin and antidiuretic hormone, ADH. Okay. So important hormones that are stored and then released from the posterior pituitary are oxytocin and then antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. ADH. The pineal gland. So this is sort of a switched view. Here's the cerebellum, the nasal cavity, the pituitary, and then the hypothalamus. And right here would be the pineal gland. So here's the anterior, the front of the brain, and then the back. And right here would be the pineal gland. So hormone that is important associated with the pineal gland is melatonin. Target tissue would be the hypothalamus and anterior pituitary, or just know that is target tissue is mainly the brain. Okay. Now let's talk about the glands in the cervical region. These are the thyroid, right here seen in the throat, right below the thyroid cartilage. So the thyroid cartilage is here, and then right here this gland is the thyroid. If we turn this thyroid around, seen here, we see the parathyroid glands here, 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 and here. They look like little seeds. These are the parathyroid glands. So hormones associated with the thyroid are TH, or thyroid hormone, also known as thyroxine, whose target tissue is most cells. Most cells. So we know one of the main actions of thyroid hormone is to increase metabolic rate. And here we have a picture of the cat, and we see the thyroid. Here's a portion of the thyroid. Here's another portion of the thyroid right here on the cat. Also, another important hormone associated with the thyroid is calcitonin, and its target is bone, kidney, and the intestine. So another hormones associated with the thyroid are thyroid hormone, or thyroxine, and then calcitonin. The parathyroid glands, the hormone associated with the parathyroid glands is PTH, or parathyroid hormone. Its target tissue are bones, the small intestine, and then the kidneys. Now the gland found in the thoracic region is the thymus, that sits right upon the heart. So it sits upon the heart. So this big gland right here is the thymus. The hormone associated with the thymus is thymosin. Its target tissue would be the thymus cortex. So here we have another picture of the cat, and it's sort of hard to make out, but this is the thymus here. That's the thymus. And it stimulates lymphocyte production within the thymus. So it stimulates lymphocyte production. Glands found in the abdominal region are the pancreas, seen here. The tail is towards the spleen, and then the head is right here. And then you have the adrenals, which is on top of the kidneys. So here's one, here's the right adrenal, and then the left is right here. So the pancreas and then the adrenals. Hormones associated with the pancreas are glucagon and insulin. The target tissue for glucagon would be liver and adipose, and then the same for insulin. So here's a picture of the cat, and we can just make out the tail of the pancreas seen here. So right here would be the spleen, and the stomach is lifted up. She's holding the stomach here, and underneath it would be the tail of the pancreas. The head would be down here, and then right here would be the spleen. So this is the pancreas in here. So important hormones associated with pancreas are glucagon and insulin. These are the ones that you need to know. Then you have the adrenals. Another picture of the cat. The adrenals are sometimes what is referred to as suprarenal and are not as close to the kidneys as they are in the human. So right here would be the adrenal gland, sort of farther away. So it's suprarenal. So here's the adrenal gland. Hormones associated are broken down into the adrenal cortex, which would be the outer region, and then the medulla, which is the inner region of the adrenal. In the cortex, we have mineralocorticoids, whose target is the kidney, glucocorticoids, which target is the liver and muscles, and the androgens, which targets the gonads, the skin, muscle, and bone. In the medulla, we have epinephrine, whose target is heart, bronchioles, and blood vessels, and then norepinephrine, whose target is the heart and other muscles. So know which hormones are associated with the adrenal cortex versus the medulla. Mineralocorticoids, glucocorticoids, and androgens are within the adrenal cortex. And then the adrenal medulla is epinephrine and norepinephrine. So this is important to know. Then in the pelvic region, we have the ovaries and testes, depending on if it is a male or female. The ovaries if it is a female, and testes if it is a male. Hormones associated with the ovaries in a female are estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen's target tissue is the uterus and breast tissue, and then progesterone is the target tissue is also uterus and breast tissue. Remember, without these hormones, our female's menstrual cycle would not be able to function properly. The testes, important hormone to note, is the testosterone. Its target tissue is many tissues such as bone, muscle, seminal vesicles for sperm production, or just a few. Okay, so today we identified glands and their associated structures in specific regions, the glands and their basic associated hormones, and then the target tissues for those hormones. I hope you enjoyed this video. Have a great day of learning.